In the frozen silence of Antarctica, radar scans revealed something that should not exist. The geometric structures buried deep beneath the ice. Welcome to Hidden Index, where the past reveals what the present chose to forget. In 1946, the United States of America launched Operation Highjump. The official record stated it was a research mission designed to establish Antarctic research bases and test military equipment in frigid conditions. Admiral Richard Evelyn Byard Jr. led a fleet of 13 ships, 33 aircraft, and 4,700 men into the most hostile environment on Earth. The expedition was scheduled to last 8 months. It ended abruptly after 8 weeks. No formal explanation was ever provided to the public. Admiral Byard returned to the United States of America and gave a single interview to a Chilean journalist named Lee Van Atta on March 5, 1947. In that interview, Byard stated that the United States of America needed to prepare defenses against aircraft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. The interview was published in El Mercurio newspaper in Santiago. It was never republished in American media. 3 months later, Admiral Byard was ordered to Washington for extensive debriefing. He never spoke publicly about Operation Highjump again. The official mission logs from Operation Highjump remain partially classified. Photographs taken during the expedition show vast ice formations and naval vessels positioned across the coastline. But several photographs from the collection held by the National Archives show dark openings in cliff faces along the Antarctic coast. These images were catalogued but never analyzed in public documentation. In 2001, a researcher named Colin Summerhays published findings in the Journal of Quaternary Science describing sediment cores extracted from beneath the Ross Ice Shelf. The cores contained pollen samples. The pollen belonged to beech trees and conifers. Those species cannot survive in Antarctica today. The samples were radiocarbon dated. They were 8,000 years old. That meant Antarctica once supported forests. It meant the continent was not always frozen. In 2009, a team from the British Antarctic Survey used ice-penetrating radar to map the Gamburtsev mountain range buried beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. The mountains rise to heights of nearly 3,000 meters but have been hidden under ice for more than 14 million years. The radar revealed something unexpected. The mountains showed signs of river valleys carved into their slopes. River valleys require flowing water. Flowing water requires temperatures above freezing. The data suggested that at some point in the distant past, parts of Antarctica were warm enough to sustain liquid water and potentially life. Lead researcher Fausto Ferraccioli stated in interviews that the mountains resembled the European Alps before they were covered by glaciers. But the formation of those river systems would have required not thousands but millions of years of temperate climate. That contradicted models showing Antarctica began freezing over 34 million years ago during the Eocene-Oligocene transition. In 2012, Russian scientists working at Vostok Station completed a decades-long drilling project. They penetrated through 3,769 meters of ice to reach Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake the size of Lake Ontario that had been sealed beneath the ice for more than 15 million years. The lake sits in complete darkness under pressures that would crush most known life forms. When the team extracted water samples, they found evidence of bacterial life. The organisms had adapted to survive in isolation for millions of years without sunlight or surface nutrients. Chief scientist Sergei Bulek confirmed the findings in interviews with Nature Journal. If life could survive in Lake Vostok, it raised the question of what else might exist in the 400 other subglacial lakes scattered beneath Antarctica. Some of those lakes are larger than Vostok. Some have never been accessed. In 2013, a research team led by Ralph von Fries from Ohio State University published gravity anomaly data in the journal Earth and Planetary Science Letters. The data revealed a massive impact crater beneath the ice in Wilkes Land, East Antarctica. The crater measured 500 kilometers across. It was more than twice the size of the Chicxulub crater in Mexico, which is believed to have caused the extinction of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Von Fries and his team suggested the Wilkes Land crater was caused by an asteroid impact approximately 250 million years ago during the Permian-Triassic extinction event. That event wiped out 90% of all species on Earth. The impact would have been catastrophic. but the crater remained hidden until satellites equipped with gravity-measuring instruments flew over the region. No surface evidence exists because the ice above the crater is more than a mile thick. In 2016, researchers from the University of Edinburgh and the British Antarctic Survey published thermal imaging data showing that the Wilkes Land region experiences unusual geothermal heat. The heat comes from deep within the Earth's mantle. It creates pockets of liquid water beneath the ice even in the coldest regions of the continent. The study suggested these geothermal zones could sustain microbial ecosystems completely independent from the surface world. The heat also creates instability in the ice sheet above. Sections of the ice in Wilkes Land are melting from below. That raised concerns about sea level rise, but also opened questions about what might be exposed if the ice continues to thin. In 1938, the German Antarctic expedition departed Hamburg aboard the vessel Schwabenland. The mission was led by Captain Alfred Richer under orders from Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe. The stated objective was to establish a German territorial claim in Antarctica. The expedition lasted 3 months. During that time, German aircraft conducted extensive aerial photography of a region they named New Schwabenland, or New Swabia. The pilots dropped thousands of metal markers engraved with swastikas across 350,000 square kilometers of territory. Richer submitted his final report to the Reich Ministry in June 1939. The report described ice-free mountain ranges, warm water lakes, and vegetation along the coast. Richer noted the area had potential for long-term settlement. 3 months later, Germany invaded Poland and the Second World War began. The German territorial claim in Antarctica was never formalized. After the war, Allied forces captured German records including maps and reconnaissance photographs from the New Schwabenland expedition. Those documents were classified. Most were never released to the public. In 1949, an Argentine naval officer named Captain Jorge Leal discovered a series of caves along the coast of the Antarctic Peninsula. The caves were large enough to shelter ships. Inside the caves, Leal reported finding what appeared to be man-made markings on the stone walls. He photographed the markings and submitted a report to the Argentine Naval Ministry. The report described the symbols as geometric patterns arranged in repeating sequences. Leal speculated they might represent some form of communication. The report was reviewed and archived. No follow-up investigation was authorized. Decades later, researchers examining the archived documents found Leal's photographs among unclassified files. The symbols resembled petroglyphs found in pre-Columbian sites across South America. But petroglyphs require human presence. No evidence of human habitation in Antarctica has ever been confirmed by mainstream archaeology. In 2001, satellite imagery from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration showed unusual surface features in the Transantarctic Mountains. The features appeared as straight lines extending for several kilometers across the ice. Geologist Dr. John Hall analyzed the images and noted the lines were too uniform to be natural crevasses. He suggested they might represent subsurface structures revealed by differential ice melting. When ground-penetrating radar was used to scan the area, the results showed rectangular voids beneath the ice at depths ranging from 300 to 600 meters. The voids measured approximately 100 meters in length and 20 meters in width. Dr. Hall stated the formations resembled large chambers or corridors. He proposed they could be lava tubes formed by volcanic activity. But lava tubes do not typically form in straight lines or perfect rectangles. In 2004, a team of glaciologists from the University of California published data in the journal Science showing that the West Antarctic ice sheet had completely collapsed at least once in the last million years. Core samples revealed evidence of open ocean where the ice sheet currently stands. Marine sediments found beneath the ice contained fossilized diatoms, microscopic algae that only grow in open water exposed to sunlight. The discovery meant the ice sheet was not a permanent feature of the continent. It had formed, melted, and reformed multiple times over geological history. If the ice sheet had melted even once in the last million years, the question arose: what existed on the land before the ice returned? In 2007, archaeologist Dr. Gudrun Corvinus published findings describing anomalous stone tools discovered during a geological survey near the Shackleton Range. The tools were found embedded in sediment layers dated to approximately 12,000 years ago. Dr. Corvinus noted the tools showed signs of deliberate shaping and use. She submitted samples for peer review. Other archaeologists dismissed the findings, stating the tools were likely geofacts, naturally fractured stones that resemble human artifacts. Dr. Corvinus maintained her position but was unable to secure funding for further excavation. The site was not revisited. The tools remain in storage at the University of Tübingen in Germany. In 2010, cartographers digitizing old naval charts from the Library of Congress discovered a map dated 1513. The map was created by Turkish Admiral Piri Reis and showed the coast of South America and the western coast of Africa. But the map also showed a landmass at the bottom of the world. The landmass extended from South America southward toward the pole. Its coastline matched the contours of the Antarctic Peninsula, but Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1820 when Russian explorer Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen sighted the continent. The Piri Reis map predated that discovery by more than 300 years. Even more unusual was that the coastline shown on the map resembled the Antarctic coast as it would appear without ice. Modern satellite mapping of the bedrock beneath the Antarctic ice sheet revealed topography strikingly similar to what Piri Reis had drawn 5 centuries earlier. In notes written on the map itself, Piri Reis stated he compiled the chart using older maps, some of which dated back to the time of Alexander the Great in the 4th century before the Common Era. In 2015, researchers from the Alfred Wegener Institute used seismic reflection surveys to map the ocean floor around Antarctica. The surveys detected what appeared to be submerged structures off the coast of Queen Maud Land. The structures rose from the seafloor in tiered formations resembling pyramids. Lead researcher Dr. Heinz Miller stated the formations were likely sedimentary rock shaped by ocean currents and tectonic activity. But the formations showed symmetry uncommon in natural geological processes. When side-scan sonar was deployed to create detailed images, the structures displayed angular edges and flat surfaces. Dr. Miller acknowledged the formations were unusual but stopped short of suggesting they were artificial. The data was published in Marine Geology Journal but received little attention outside academic circles. In 2018, a whistleblower identifying as a former contractor with the United States Antarctic Program posted documents online claiming secret drilling operations had accessed a large cavern beneath the ice near the South Pole. The documents included photographs of what appeared to be excavation equipment and personnel in cold weather gear standing inside a massive ice chamber illuminated by floodlights. The whistleblower claimed the cavern contained ruins of structures built from stone blocks fitted together without mortar. The posts were removed within hours. Investigators tracing the origin of the posts identified the user as Brian, a logistics coordinator who had worked at McMurdo Station between 2012 and 2017. Brian could not be located for interviews. The United States Antarctic Program issued a statement denying any unauthorized excavation activities and reaffirmed its commitment to the Antarctic Treaty, which prohibits military activity and mineral exploitation on the continent. No independent verification of Brian's claims has been possible. In 2019, climatologists analyzing ice cores from the EPICA Dome Sea drilling project discovered ash layers embedded in ice dated to approximately 74,000 years ago. The ash matched volcanic deposits from the Toba supervolcano eruption in Indonesia, one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history. The eruption triggered a volcanic winter that lasted years and nearly caused human extinction. Only a few thousand humans are believed to have survived the event, but the presence of Toba ash in Antarctic ice confirmed that volcanic material circulated through the global atmosphere and deposited across all continents. It also confirmed that Antarctica was continuously accumulating ice during the time when humans first began migrating out of Africa. If humans reached all other continents during that period, the question arose whether any reached Antarctica before it became fully frozen. In 2022, geophysicists from the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory published research in Nature Geoscience describing a massive rift system beneath the Antarctic ice. The rift stretches more than 3,000 kilometers from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea, effectively dividing East and West Antarctica. The rift is tectonically active. It generates significant geothermal heat, which melts the ice from below and creates subglacial rivers and lakes. The study estimated that if the rift continues to widen, it could eventually split Antarctica into two separate landmasses. But the same geothermal activity that threatens the ice sheet today would have created habitable zones in the past. Warm pockets of land surrounded by ice could have supported ecosystems isolated from the rest of the world. What evolved or existed in those isolated zones remains unknown. In 2023, satellite data from the European Space Agency revealed sudden changes in ice thickness over a region near the Transantarctic Mountains. The ice had thinned by more than 50 meters in less than a decade. When researchers examined the cause, they found evidence of subsurface water movement. The water was flowing from beneath the ice toward the coast. Thermal imaging showed the water was warmer than surrounding ice, suggesting a geothermal heat source. The flow pattern indicated the water was emerging from a specific point beneath the surface, almost like a spring. Engineers calculated the volume of water and determined it would require a subsurface reservoir larger than any known subglacial lake. The reservoir has not been directly accessed. Its depth and extent remain unmapped. In declassified Central Intelligence Agency files released under the Freedom of Information Act, a memo dated January 1956 referenced Operation Deep Freeze, a joint military operation to establish permanent research stations in Antarctica. The memo included a handwritten note in the margin that read, "Recommends surveillance of Soviet activity near Vostok region, unconfirmed reports of excavation." The note was not signed. No follow-up documents clarifying the excavation reports have been found in the released files. The Soviet Union established Vostok Station in 1957 during the International Geophysical Year. Official records state the station was built solely for meteorological and glaciological research, but construction of the station required drilling and excavation through ice more than 3 kilometers thick. What the Soviets encountered during that process was never disclosed. In 2006, a French-Italian research team drilling near Dome Sea in East Antarctica reported equipment malfunctions at a depth of 3,200 meters. The drill bit encountered an obstruction described in field notes as metallic. Engineers attempted to clear the obstruction but were unable to penetrate further. The drilling operation was suspended. Samples retrieved from the drill site showed traces of manganese and iron oxides not typical of Antarctic bedrock. The findings were documented in internal reports but were not published in peer-reviewed journals. When questioned about the incident years later, team leader Dr. Jerome Chapelaz stated the obstruction was likely a meteorite fragment embedded in the ice. He acknowledged that metallic meteorites are rare in Antarctic ice cores, but maintained that no other explanation was plausible. In 2011, mountaineers climbing Mount Vinson, Antarctica's highest peak, discovered a series of flat stone platforms on an isolated ridge approximately 2,000 meters above sea level. The platforms were arranged in a row and each measured roughly 3 meters across. The stones appeared to have been shaped and placed deliberately. Photographs of the site were uploaded to climbing forums and shared widely online. Geologists reviewing the images stated the formations were likely the result of freeze-thaw weathering, a natural process that can create flat surfaces on exposed rock. But freeze-thaw weathering typically produces irregular shapes. The platforms photographed on Mount Vinson were uniformly flat and oriented in the same direction. No formal investigation of the site has been conducted. The platforms remain accessible only to experienced climbers willing to summit one of the most remote peaks on Earth. In 2014, radar data from NASA's Operation Icebridge detected a massive anomaly beneath the ice in Marie Bayad Land. The anomaly was identified as a mantle plume, a column of superheated rock rising from deep within the Earth. The plume generates heat equivalent to the output of Yellowstone's volcanic system. It has been active for millions of years and is responsible for melting ice from below across an area the size of New Mexico. But mantle plumes do not typically form beneath continents. They are usually found beneath oceanic crust or at the boundaries of tectonic plates. The presence of such a powerful heat source beneath Antarctica has no clear geological explanation. Some researchers have proposed the plume was triggered by the Wilkes Land asteroid impact 250 million years ago. The impact could have fractured the Earth's crust and allowed mantle material to rise toward the surface. If that hypothesis is correct, the heat source beneath Antarctica has been active longer than mammals have existed on Earth. In 2017, paleontologists analyzing fossils from Seymour Island off the Antarctic Peninsula published descriptions of a previously unknown species of large flightless bird. The bird, named Crossvalia vaporensis, stood more than 1.5 meters tall and lived approximately 60 million years ago, shortly after the extinction of the dinosaurs. The fossil record showed Antarctica during that time was covered in forests and had a temperate climate. Rivers flowed across the continent and the ocean surrounding it teemed with marine life. But the fossil also raised questions about how such species could have evolved in isolation. Antarctica had already separated from South America and Australia by 60 million years ago. The land mass was drifting toward the South Pole. For species like Crossvalia to exist, they would have needed millions of years of stable environmental conditions. That suggested Antarctica remained habitable far longer than current climate models predict. In 2020, archaeologists examining artifacts housed in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Italy discovered a frozen leather pouch that had been recovered during a glacier survey in the Alps. Inside the pouch were seeds from a plant species identified as Nothofagus, the southern beech tree. Nothofagus trees are native only to the southern hemisphere, specifically South America, Australia, New Zealand, and Antarctica. The seeds were radiocarbon dated to approximately 10,000 years ago. The pouch itself was dated to the same period. Researchers were unable to explain how seeds from a southern hemisphere plant ended up in the Alps. The find suggested long-distance contact between distant regions during the last ice age. But if people were capable of transporting seeds across hemispheres 10,000 years ago, the possibility of earlier contact with Antarctica could not be dismissed. In 2021, seismologists monitoring earthquake activity in the Antarctic region detected unusual seismic signals originating from beneath the ice near the South Pole. The signals repeated at regular intervals every 36 hours. The pattern was consistent over several months. Seismic signals typically occur randomly or in response to tectonic stress. Regular intervals suggest a mechanical or biological source. Dr. Samantha Hansen from the University of Alabama, who led the monitoring project, stated the signals resembled ice quakes caused by shifting glaciers. But ice quakes do not repeat on predictable schedules. The source of the signals has not been identified. Monitoring continues. In historical accounts from early Antarctic explorers, references to strange phenomena appear frequently. Ernest Shackleton wrote in his journal during the Nimrod expedition of 1907 through 1909 about hearing unexplained sounds resembling machinery coming from beneath the ice. Robert Falcon Scott mentioned in letters from the Terra Nova expedition that members of his team reported seeing lights moving across the interior ice sheet at night. Lights in Antarctica are rare. The aurora australis occurs but appears as diffuse curtains in the sky, not as discrete moving points of light. Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen, who led the first successful expedition to reach the South Pole in 1911, noted in his private diaries that his sled dogs refused to travel in certain directions. Amundsen attributed the behavior to instinct but could not identify what the dogs were reacting to. These accounts were dismissed at the time as the result of isolation, exhaustion, and the psychological strain of polar exploration. But the accounts were consistent across multiple expeditions separated by years and involving different teams. In 1933, the Chilean government submitted a formal territorial claim to Antarctica based on discovery and proximity. The claim included maps showing Chilean explorers had visited the Antarctic Peninsula as early as 1603. The maps referenced Spanish colonial records describing a frozen land south of Cape Horn inhabited by no living men. The records stated that the land was cursed and that expeditions attempting to establish settlements disappeared without explanation. The Spanish crown ordered no further expeditions to the region after 1627. The order remained in effect for more than a century. When British explorers arrived in the region in the 1700s, they found no evidence of previous settlements. But they did report discovering stone cairns and wooden crosses along the coastline that appeared weathered and ancient. In 2008, historians researching Ottoman naval archives in Istanbul uncovered a second map created by Piri Reis. The map was dated 1528 and showed greater detail of the Antarctic region than his earlier 1513 chart. The 1528 map included notations in Ottoman Turkish describing the southern land as uninhabited and covered in ice, but possessing great mountains and wide rivers shown on older charts. Piri Reis wrote that the information came from Portuguese sailors who had traveled farther south than any European fleet. The Portuguese, according to Piri Reis, obtained their knowledge from maps captured during voyages to India and the Far East. Those maps, Piri Reis claimed, originated from the ancient Library of Alexandria before it was destroyed. If the claim was true, it meant knowledge of Antarctica existed in the ancient world more than 1,000 years before the continent was officially discovered. In 2012, engineers installing new telecommunications equipment at Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station reported detecting radio interference on frequencies not used by any known station or satellite. The interference lasted several hours and then ceased. Technicians traced the signal's origin to a location approximately 80 kilometers from the station beneath the ice. The signal was recorded and analyzed. It consisted of repeating pulses at regular intervals. The pattern did not match any known natural or human-made source. The recording was forwarded to the National Science Foundation, which oversees United States Antarctic operations. The foundation issued a statement attributing the interference to solar activity affecting ionospheric propagation. No further investigation was authorized. The recording was classified and has not been publicly released. In 2016, satellite imagery from the Sentinel program detected a large circular formation in the ice near the coast of Wilkes Land. The formation measured approximately 120 kilometers in diameter and appeared as a slight depression in the ice surface. Image analysis showed the depression was uniform in depth and perfectly circular. Glaciologists reviewing the imagery suggested the depression could indicate a subglacial lake or a region where the ice is thinner due to geothermal heat. But subglacial lakes typically form irregular shapes following the contours of the bedrock beneath them. Circular depressions of this scale are rare in nature. When gravitational field measurements were analyzed, the region showed an unusual mass deficit, meaning less mass existed beneath the ice than would be expected. The deficit suggested the presence of a large void. The void has not been explored. In 2019, a documentary filmmaker named Linda Moulton Howe released interviews with individuals claiming to have worked on classified projects in Antarctica. The individuals who requested anonymity described being flown to remote locations on the continent where excavation and research were being conducted inside ice caverns. They claimed the caverns contained artifacts and structures that predated known human civilization. Howe presented photographs allegedly taken inside the caverns showing stone walls with inscriptions resembling no known language. The photographs could not be independently verified. Scientists and government officials dismissed the claims as hoaxes. Howe maintained the sources were credible and had provided verifiable details about their employment history. The sources have not come forward publicly. Beneath the coldest place on Earth may lie the oldest story humanity has ever forgotten. This was Hidden Index. Subscribe and uncover more stories the world was never meant to know.